Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Good evening. Good evening. How is this sound? Can you hear me? I was thinking about doing a guided meditation, but I wonder if it's just going to be too much of a strain to listen. What do you think? On the 4 elements. Yeah? Okay, we'll give it a go, hey? So, this kind of meditation uses the mindfulness that we've built up over the last 4 days, 4 and a bit days, and we apply it to this body, and we apply it internally to see the 4 elements of earth, water, heat or fire, and wind. And so we analyze internally, seeing those elements within us, and externally. And then we contemplate where these come from. We analyze. We understand that these elements, they come into our body. We are sustained by them. And then they come out of our body. And this kind of meditation helps us to understand the concept of not self and impermanence. And so it's a useful thing to do from time to time. And it's also useful to understand how, after developing our mindfulness for some time, using a neutral object like the breath, that we can then turn our mind towards the 3 characteristics of anicca, anatta, dukkha, impermanence, not self, and suffering. And so this meditation we examine internally, externally, internally and externally, and we understand that these are just elements and that they originate, they stay, they change, and they cease within this very body. So this is the practice I thought we'd do tonight. Hopefully you'll be able to hear what I say. If you don't, just kind of, I don't know, just tune out and enjoy the elements. So let's begin just by giving ourselves maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to develop some mindfulness in quietness. So take up your comfortable posture and close your eyes and use the breath to help draw you deeper into stillness and awareness. So now that the mind is a little more settled, we'll begin our analysis of the four great elements, the four properties. And we begin by analysing the earth element. And so the earth element is anything in this body that is hard, such as your fingernails, your teeth, your bones, anything that is hard, even your hair, your skin. This is the earth element. So see this earth element in your body clearly as anything hard. The earth element is also anything that is soft, such as your eyelashes, the skin under your arm, the softness of your wrist, the softness of the hairs on your ears. Anything that is soft is the earth element. And anything that is rough, such as the calluses on your heels or fingers, the ridges on your fingernails, the skin on your elbows. Anything that is rough is also earth. And anything that is smooth like your eyeballs or the roof of your mouth. This is also the earth element. Smooth like the texture of your internal organs. And anything that is heavy. This is also the earth element. The heaviness of your buttocks pressing down. The heaviness of your palms, your hands in your lap or on your knees. This heaviness is the earth element. And anything light like the touch of the breath, or light like the touch of the breeze or your clothing, light like the little hairs on your knuckles. This is also the earth element. Anything that is hard or soft, rough or smooth, heavy or light. This is the earth element in your body. So scan your body looking for these things that are hard, soft, rough, smooth, heavy or light. And see these aspects clearly. So this is contemplating the earth element internally. And we can also contemplate earth externally. We know that other people have this element within them. They have nails, teeth, bones. We understand this is the earth element too. And that all around us is earth. We see the hardness in rocks, the softness in a dandelion, we see the roughness on tree bark, the smoothness on a pebble. We see the heaviness in metals. We see the lightness in petals of a flower. This is all earth element. We use this earth to grow our food. We take this food into our body. We use its energy. And then it comes out of us as excrement. This is how the earth element is borrowed by us. Internally and externally. Our entire body has been sustained by the earth element. But we are not the owner of this element. There is just earth, just hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, heaviness, lightness. There is just earth. Seen in this way, why do I cling so strongly to this idea of me, mine, I, my body. When it is so impermanent and not self. And we can explore the water element in this body internally. We have tears, we have saliva, we sweat, we pass urine, we have blood. This is the water element in this body. Anything liquid, anything that flows is the water element. See it clearly in your body. There is mucus, snot, oil, digestive juices, this is the water element. The water element helps bind things together. This body is held together by water. It coheres, it sticks. So this is how we contemplate the water element internally. And externally, we know others too have water. We see them sweat or cry. They have spit and urine. They also have the water element. And all around me there is water. The rain, the rivers, the lakes, the ocean. And this water, we borrow it. We take it inside our body. It stays for some time. And it comes out as sweat, spit, or urine. We don't own it. We need it. Without this, we will quickly die. Knowing that this is borrowed, knowing how much we need it, why do I think of this as mine? Knowing this body is 70% water, borrowed water. How can I say this is me, mine? And we also contemplate the heat element. This is anything that is hot or cold. We get hot, we get cold. Parts of our body are warm under our arms, inside. Parts of our body are cold. Our toes, our ears. This hot and cold is the heat element. It is the fever of sickness or the chills. The heat element changes things, such as our digestive fire. It transforms the food we eat, turning it into fuel. This is the work of the heat element, changing, maturing. And so we see this in this very body, hot, cold, digesting, changing. And we can also see this heat element externally. We see other people getting hot or cold. They have warm hands or cold. They sweat and shiver. And all around us, there's heat and cold, the cycle of a day. The coldness of shadows, the hotness of the sun. And all the heat in this world that we experience comes from that sun, so far away. Its heat gives us day and night. Hot and cold seasons. And changes the temperature globally. We rely on the sun to survive. It grows our food. It heats our planet. We borrow this light, this warmth. Our body needs it. We do not own it. It is not ours, mine. This heat inside my body is impermanent. At the end of my life, this body will give up its heat. And when I'm dead, my body will become lifeless and cold. And there's nothing I can do about it. Why then do I grasp so strongly at this body, at me, my, I. And finally, we consider the wind element. We see this in our body. We breathe in, we breathe out. This air, this wind pushes. And so this wind, this air is the breath. It's gases in our body. It's wind in our body. Our burps, our farts. This is wind. And this pushing. This is our pulse, our blood moving. This element supports space. As we breathe in, our lungs expand. This element supports the space inside our nostrils, mouth and throat. This is all wind, air. We see it internally. We contemplate externally. We see others breathing in, breathing out. They burp and fart. We see the wind in the trees, hurricanes, typhoons, the movement of air from the fans, the gases in nature, our atmosphere. This is all the wind element, the air element. And with each breath in, we borrow this air. It stays in the body for a short time, nourishing the blood, nourishing the organs, the brain. And we exhale. We don't own this element. We borrow it. We need it. Without it, we quickly die. And at the end of my life, I'll take one breath in, one breath out, and I'll never breathe in again. Knowing this, why am I so attached to this body, this breath, which is so impermanent, which does not belong to me, which is not me, not mine, not I. So these are the four elements of earth, water, heat, and wind. We analyze them internally within ourselves, externally in others and all around us, both internally and externally. We understand this is just that element. It arises and ceases. And we see this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. So go on analysing these elements for the next few minutes to complete the meditation. So this is how we can investigate the elements. So take a few moments to review this contemplation. How did it feel to analyze the elements? Was it clear to you? Did you use your mindfulness to see those parts of the body? Could you see the properties of those elements? Could you understand their borrowed nature? And what did you learn about the nature of self? Very good. So this is Vipassana style analysis, where we look at the three characteristics of impermanence, anatta, and perhaps we start to understand why this is suffering. So this is something you can do from time to time in your practice. Do an analysis, an analytical meditation. So you notice it's quite a different technique to watching the breath, right? You have to apply the mind to investigate much more. And it's less calming and tranquil in that the mind is more busy, more active. But the mindfulness that you've developed over the last few days helps you to see more clearly, helps you to stay with the subject of meditation more easily. And so this meditation is useful for chipping away at our self-view and our attachment to this body. It helps us understand impermanence and death. So let's have a 5-minute break, have a stretch, have some movement, shake off the bugs. Is anyone else getting attacked by bugs, or is it just me? Just me? Okay. And come back and we'll have a quick Dharma talk and some questions. How did you find the 4-element contemplation? Was it okay? Who loved it? Yes, good. Who hated it? Some people really hate guided meditation for a start, which makes that difficult. But if you've never heard that before, then now you know how to do it yourself, right? So sometimes these instructions are useful, even if they're irritating from time to time. To hear some new techniques perhaps might be good for your practice. And to see the difference with how different techniques, different meditation subjects have completely different purposes. But all of these techniques the Buddha taught, they're all leading in the same way. They're all going the same direction. Their purpose is to help us come out of suffering and attain nibbana. So this is how we should understand our toolkit of meditation techniques. We use these things for different purposes at different times. And so as you go along the spiritual path, don't get stuck in just one practice. Make sure you develop a broad knowledge of different meditation techniques and subjects, and that you have one technique that you really, really practice regularly and you zone into very deeply, so that you have your everyday practice, if you will, and then you have these other things that you add to your practice. So for most of us, that will be using some sort of breath meditation or body scan contemplation. And then you add in these other things like things that bring joy, such as the recollection of your generosity or your ethics, or the recollection of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. And you bring things in which create wisdom, such as the contemplation of impermanence, the four elements, or death. And so in this way you cover different aspects of the path. You bring in love and compassion so that you don't neglect your emotional relationship to yourself and others. So we want to be complete practitioners, not just specializing in one thing. We want to have more than just a hammer. So tonight I just wanted to continue talking a little bit about what we've been doing and talking about the four right efforts and the bojjhangas, the 7 factors of enlightenment. So today there was one of the cooks who's been volunteering here and helping out making really delicious food for us all. She stopped me and asked me how the food was. And you know that monks, we're not allowed to really talk too much about these things, right? So people watch very closely to see, does he like this, does he like that? Because we're not allowed to express our preferences. We should just accept whatever comes, right? And anyway, I try not to give anything away if I can. The other day, Terrence asked me, he said to me, I notice you like avocados. And I was like, someone's been watching, right? He saw that the avocado had been eaten. So this is very observant. And at the time of the Buddha, of course you had kings and you had rich people, and they had their own personal chef. And so they would present the king or the master with lots of different varieties of dishes, like sweet dishes, sour dishes, bitter dishes, spicy dishes. And a poor cook, a not very good cook, a cook who isn't going to get a bonus, wouldn't take the hint. They wouldn't observe. They wouldn't see, oh, today my master ate all of that dish, but he didn't touch this one. And so instead of giving the king what he likes, what he wants, and not giving the king what he doesn't like, what he doesn't want, they keep on just giving stuff. And so the king doesn't give a bonus, doesn't give any extra presents, isn't really happy with his chef. Because this chef doesn't take the hint. In the same way, the Buddha said, a clever chef sees what has been eaten, understands this is what the king likes. I better prepare more of that dish. Didn't touch that one. I shouldn't offer that one again. And so this chef gets bonuses, gets presents, gets rewarded for their efforts. So where is this going? Your mind, you need to, no, you're the chef. You're the chef. You need to take the hint. Yeah. You need to take the hint. If you find that you get peaceful, then you need to take the hint. This leads to peace. So the Buddha says, there's monks who don't understand why they get mindful. They don't get good meditation. They don't get bliss. They don't reach higher stages because they don't take the hint. Their mind doesn't take the hint. So this means that when there's a little bit of food that's good, that nourishes, that brings about pleasure and happiness in the mind, we might see it, but we don't take the hint. We don't know how to develop it, to cultivate it, to make it arise. We don't know how good it is for us. And so, just as we need to pay attention to starving the hindrances, we also need to make sure we look out for, cultivate and enjoy these good aspects of meditation: mindfulness, investigation, energy, piti, tranquility, samadhi, and upekkha. And that's why today and yesterday, I think, I talked about how we need to identify these things, even if they're just in small, minute qualities, so that seeing them in ourselves, recognizing them, we can develop them. We can get another portion. We can keep feeding and enjoying them. So this is how we develop and maintain those bojjhangas, those 7 factors of enlightenment. 7 awakening factors, 7 enlightenment factors. And we work with them as part of our practice. So we learn how to use them to help our meditation. We learn how to use them to work with the hindrances too. And so for some people, they don't understand that meditation is a process. They think meditation is just static. You're just doing one thing. You're just empty, blank. But this isn't true. Meditation's a process. A process means things change, right? You've seen in your own practice the way you begin isn't what it's like in the middle, isn't what it's like in the end. It changes, right? It changes over the course of one meditation sitting, let alone over the course of developing your practice throughout the years. And they think that meditation is just this kind of blank doing nothingness. But this isn't true either. It's incredibly dynamic. Meditation is active. There's stuff happening all the time, and we're involved in it as well. So you may have heard really good teachers, like my teacher also, Ajahn Brahm, who will say, just do nothing. And for him, I think that probably works very well. But he doesn't have a lot of the hindrances that might impede our progress. If we just do nothing, our little monkeys are going to just take us by the hand and say, hey, let's go over here. Our cows are going to drag us into that field and we're going to get in trouble, right? So when Ajahn Brahm says do nothing, I think he's talking about a certain stage of meditation. He's encouraging us to let go. He's encouraging us to just relax, not get involved. He's always talking about people using too much force, too much will. And as I progress as a teacher, I see more and more people coming to me saying, you know, I'm really pushing, I really want this, I want this result, I'm trying really hard. And so I can understand why Ajahn Brahm would say, just do nothing. But because I have a monkey mind, I'm like, but I can't just do nothing. And I remember thinking, is there any other part of my life where I can just do nothing and get results? And you might think, well, meditation is the opposite of life, Bhante Akaliko. You're supposed to just do nothing. It's like the opposite of life. But think about this. Think about something like driving a car. Could you just do nothing? Sooner or later you need to turn left, or slow down, or speed up. Sooner or later you're going to have to stop. Maybe start again. Turn right. Speed up. Slow down. All of the things that we do in life, we have to be involved in, right? So when Ajahn Brahm talks about doing nothing, I think he's talking about a particular stage of meditation or a particular strategy for meditation. When the Buddha talked about meditation, he described this very dynamic experience where we are active in creating the conditions in our mind. For example, he taught the anusatis, where we recollect qualities of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, for example, and we develop joy in the mind. And he said that this is how you should use these. If your meditation is becoming sluggish and bored, then you should inspire the mind by turning the mind to a topic of inspiration that brings joy into your mind. And once you're feeling happy and good and inspired again, then you go back to your other meditation. And when I read this, I was like, oh, that sounds makes sense, you know? I can understand why the Buddha would teach in this way. Because sometimes our mind becomes pretty ordinary, right? And it's possible to direct the thoughts in the way that the Buddha describes. So when it comes to the 5 hindrances and the 7 bojjhangas, the Buddha used an analogy of fire. So if you want a fire, you have to add fuel, right? If you want to put out a fire, you have to use sand or water. So the Buddha said, sometimes your mind is sluggish. You've got some sloth and torpor. So I've already mentioned that he gave a whole heap of strategies to use if you have sloth and torpor, such as standing up, pulling your ears, imagining a bright light, doing walking meditation. So these are all strategies recommended by the Buddha. And he also said that we can use the bojjhangas. We can use the 7 factors of enlightenment, 7 awakening factors. Do you remember what they are? Should we go through them quickly? First one, sati, mindfulness. Dhammavichaya, investigation. Energy. Piti, yeah. Tranquility, yeah. Samadhi and upekkha, 7. So, the Buddha says, if your mind is feeling sluggish, it's like a fire that is very small. So you want to add more fuel to that fire. You don't want to add water or sand. You want the fire to come up. You don't want to put it out. And so, if you want more energy in your mind, at that time, you should cultivate the enlightenment factors of investigation, energy, and piti. So these 3 things, they give energy and movement and excitement to the mind. It brightens it up, yeah? Energy brightens up the mind. Investigation, what's going on here? Let's see, I have to be aware, I have to think. And piti, that rush of energy, that positive energy in the body. And so the Buddha said, if you want to brighten up your mind, if you've got a sluggish mind, if you want more energy, if you want more awareness, then at that time you do these 3 contemplations of investigation, energy, piti. Contemplating these enlightenment factors will get that fire going. And so sometimes you might have a mind of restlessness, the opposite, right? At that time, that fire is burning too brightly. So you don't want to add more fuel, right? You want to dampen it down. And so you maybe add some water or some sand, or the Buddha says, cow poo. So at that time, you shouldn't develop investigation, energy, or piti, because these things will just make that fire brighter. You want to calm it down. So instead, you investigate tranquility, samadhi, upekkha, right? The tranquility calms the mind. The samadhi unifies and stills the mind. The upekkha is even-minded, right? And so this is how the Buddha said that we should work. If we're feeling restless, we cultivate the opposite. If we're feeling slothful and dull and drowsy, we cultivate the opposite. What enlightenment factor is missing? Sati. When should you use sati? All the time. Very good. Trick question. And so this shows us that the Buddha saw meditation as being quite dynamic. Sometimes we can bring these things into our mind. We use it to inspire the mind, We use it to create a certain result. And when the Buddha talked about the awakening factors, he said you can contemplate these things one at a time, any time of the day. He says it's like a person who has a wardrobe full of clothes. They go in and they pick those ones and they wear that. In the same way, he said, you can choose an enlightenment factor and contemplate that. And so we can actually get to know these factors in their own way by themselves. We can contemplate them as meditation subjects. So we don't just need to wait for them to arise naturally. We can get our mind familiar with them, what they're like. We can investigate them and turn our mind to them. And in this way, we can help to develop them. And I'll just share one more sutta about this working in meditation, where we're encouraged by the Buddha to be dynamic. And this is the simile of a goldsmith. And so it's similar to the simile of the fire that I just mentioned. In this simile, the goldsmith has to purify the gold, right? So the goldsmith has to heat the gold, cool the gold. And so if they only were to do one action, the process would never be finished. If they were to, for example, to do nothing, the gold would never be purified. If they were only to heat the bellows, you know what the bellows are? To create more fire in the crucible, then if they were to heat it too much, then the gold would get burnt. If they sprinkle the gold with water to cool it down, and they only sprinkle the gold with water, then it's going to get brittle and break. And so what the Buddha says in this simile is that at times the goldsmith will need to heat up the gold. At other times, the goldsmith will need to cool it down. And at other times, the goldsmith should just do nothing. And so this shows how our practice is dynamic, how we need to be engaged and aware of what's going on in our practice, in our mind, and respond accordingly. Otherwise, if we're feeling really dull and drowsy and we just do nothing and just sit with it, sure, eventually it will change. But if you're just meditating for 15 minutes a week and you're dull and drowsy for that entire 15 minutes, then you've wasted this opportunity to train and develop your mind. Even if you just meditate an hour a week and 50 minutes of that are restlessness, then again, you've spent this entire period not training your mind, but in the grip of a hindrance. So we need to learn how to identify the hindrances. We need to learn how to work with them when they're present. And so the Buddha gives us permission to be more involved in our mind, to know how to respond, to have some tools that help us. Tomorrow I'll talk a little bit more about some final strategies for dealing with your monkeys. And that is the higher training of monkey mind management. And so I'll give one final talk tomorrow. But I just wanted to answer some of these questions and then we should all go to bed, right? So there's a question about meditation here, and it's about piti. The piti experienced by a yogi is it the beginning of first jhana? Yes and no. So there's some things called the jhana factors. So Buddhism is really, really, like, the doctrine is incredibly well ordered and analysed. So there's like 7 enlightenment factors, 5 hindrances, 4 jhanas, and each of these jhanas has jhana factors. So for the first jhana, we have 4 or 5 different factors. The first is applied thought or directed thought. The second is sustained attention on that. So it's kind of like the commentator Buddhaghosa says it's like this. There's the ringing of the bell, the hitting of it, and then there's the resonance, right? So this is the Takavachara. This is when you put your mind on an object and you sustain your awareness of that object. So this is like when I talk about the train tracks that you get into the breath meditation. It's like on the train track and it's just going in that direction. So it's kind of a bit like that, you're on the tracks and you stay on the tracks. That's the quality of mind. It's very strongly focused on the meditation subject. So that's the first 2 factors. Then there's piti. Then there's sukha. Then there's, in some of these analyses, one-pointedness. And so all of these factors need to be present to have jhana. And they need to be strong and powerful. And so they grow and they develop and they get bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger and more powerful. And when they're all completely perfected and when the hindrances are suppressed, then jhana can occur. So piti is not just the beginning of first jhana, it's one of the factors. And as I said the other night, because piti is quite coarse, it kind of has this kind of wobbling quality to it. And in the subsequent jhanas, piti is abandoned and there's just the bliss, which is much more stable. From what I understand about Bhante's sharing last night, the jhana or piti can never happen while a yogi was washing dishes or running an errand. Someone shared that he felt a sense of unexplainable joy while washing the dishes. Then what was he experiencing? He was experiencing joy. So in the landscape of the mind, experiencing a little bit of joy whilst washing the dishes is kind of at this end of the spectrum. It's like a 1 out of 10. Jhana is like a 9 out of 10. Enlightenment is like 10 out of 10 in terms of bliss. And so in our own way, we'll experience joy and pleasure. Even in our meditation, we might experience some, what we think is incredible joy. But this is just the beginning of what's possible to experience. This is one of the problems actually with people who meditate without a good teacher. They have one good meditation session and they think they're enlightened. And it's like, no, you just had a few moments of joy. Like, if you just hang in there, that'll get much, much, much deeper. And so, yeah, we can experience joy. And that's why the Buddha taught joy over and over and over and over again. If you look through the suttas, you see that the Buddha was always talking about pleasurable mind states that are attainable. And if you think about it, you've got suffering, pain, and then you have freedom from suffering, which is going to be stuff like happiness and joy, right? And so if we're talking about a path that is aimed at coming out of suffering, then you'd want to see some pleasurable mind states somewhere along the way, right? Otherwise, it's like, what am I doing this for? And so meditators, people who kind of do a lot of meditation, they get familiar with these mind states and they understand how to cultivate them. And this is how the Buddha invited us to practice. So I said before, if you're feeling sluggish, the Buddha recommended turning your mind to an inspiring theme, such as recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Recollecting in this way, inspiration comes up and the mind is buoyant and inspired and joyful. The joy is what keeps you meditating. The joy, the piti, the bliss, the tranquility, this is what will keep you interested in meditation. This is what will keep you on the cushion for long periods of time. This is what will oppose things like restlessness and sluggishness and things like anger and hatred. These positive mind states purify the mind of the hindrances. They purify the mind of defilements. They make you feel good. And they make you want to be on the spiritual path. And so that's why the Buddha constantly talked about joy, constantly talked about the pleasures of meditation. And that's why we're allowed to enjoy them as part of our spiritual practice, because they're helping us to come out of suffering. And so even if we have just a little bit of joy, then it's a good sign. And you can have weird, inexplicable moments of joy in the spiritual path. Like sometimes just seeing someone giving dana will bring up a rush of piti within you. Or hearing a dharma talk, understanding something, and you get this joy in your heart. Or seeing a monk or a nun might bring a lot of joy into your heart. And there's so many ways to cultivate that joy that the Buddha talks about. Recollecting spiritual friendship brings about joy. So we have many opportunities, inside meditation, outside meditation. When we do good, we reflect upon it, joy rises in our mind, we're a good person. So this is a really important part of the path. We're trying to come out of our suffering. So you'd hope that by coming out of suffering, we should experience some happiness, right? And so this is the way the Buddha outlined the path. A movement from suffering towards happiness. But we can see in this very lifetime. You should see the results of your practice pretty much immediately. And even if you just get a tiny bit of calm, a tiny bit of peace, then that's pretty special. Because even though it's small, you've come out of a huge amount of suffering. And even though it's small, it can be developed and can become huge, massive, vast, limitless. So this is the power of developing and cultivating these mind states. They don't just remain small and weak, they can become huge and powerful. So, shall we have a little bit of an early mark tonight? Finish up, go to bed early. It's quite difficult to listen with the rain. Kind of makes it a bit hard to hear. So we'll finish up by remembering all the goodness that we've done. So this is why the Buddha said, don't ever be afraid of merit making, because the merits that you make are incalculable, like the water in the ocean. Even the smallest action you do is like an ocean of merit. So when you reflect in this way, it's powerful. Who knows how many oceans of merit you have all made today, spilling over into the universe with your good qualities. Idam me nyatinam hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idam me nyatinam hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idam me nyatinam hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. And we'll pay respects to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Very good. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so have a good night's sleep. Tomorrow is our last day, so the morning starts out just as normal, getting up early, coming here to do some more meditation, then breakfast. After breakfast, we'll change the timetable slightly, but I'll let you know about that tomorrow. So sleep well, and I look forward to seeing you all in the morning. Good night.